the thanks really go to the students, the teachers, the principals, the staffs in every school, the people who were on the front line that really made this happen. It could not have been done if they didn't do the hard work to get us here.
When you took over, the schools they weren't just failing, it was a complete disaster.
McGraw, I guess it was more maybe the adults weren't doing the job that they needed to do, and the district was in need of true leadership. And certainly we have gotten that in the hiring of Superintendent Kelvin Adams. He has done a terrific job in providing direction, creating a great, strong, rigorous academic program for the students, professional development for teachers and principals. He addressed every little detail within the district, worked to improve every part of it, and I think the outcome is the most important thing, and that is improving academics and better learning opportunities for our students.
Graduation rates were in the 50s. They're now in the 70s?
They're approaching 80%. Everything. Attendance is improved. Academics is improved. All of the measurements that the state of Missouri, the Department of Education, uses to judge and assess schools, all of them are up and increasing.
The budget went from a massive deficit to a massive budget surplus.
That's correct.
How'd you do that?
Again, in working with the superintendent, being careful with the dollars, generating every source of revenue that we could, and making sure we were spending money in the right places. We did some things that cost some money. There were some unsafe conditions led in our schools. We spent almost right out of the gate $10 million to make classrooms safe for young students and remove that lead. Just recently addressed lead concerns in the water. So I think the SAB, and I want to give certainly some thanks to the fellow board members that I served with for these 9 years, Richard Gaines and Melanie Adams. Melanie has recently moved on to a position in Minneapolis and recently replaced by Darnetta Klinkscale. But, it's been a real unique opportunity for all three of us to be involved. So to roll up our sleeves, work in a partnership with the superintendent, and address all of these little things that added up to what has become full accreditation of the district today.
Was she the woman who drove in from Kansas City every day?
No, that was the former superintendent at Jennings.
Okay.
Melanie worked here. She worked for the Missouri History Museum and had a great opportunity with, I think, the Minnesota History Museum, and she really couldn't pass up that great career step. But she did a terrific job serving on this board and did a great service to the citizens of St. Louis.
Now, it's not a complete panacea. Test scores are still not where they want to be or should be, but it's all headed in the right direction.
It is. There will be a celebration in the schools tomorrow. Every school is going to celebrate. I think everybody walks around in the district with, chest out, shoulders a little straighter, and feeling very proud and happy with what's been accomplished. But Dr. Adams has made it very clear that, one victory lap and back to work, because there is a lot of work to do, and we've still got a lot of work to attain our goal, which is every student reading at grade level. The job's not done until we can say that.
You almost lost him at some point. Wasn't it Los Angeles School District came begging for him?
Well, I've said this before. I think every executive search person who works in the field of academics has his number on speed dial. He's in great demand, but I think that's one of the pluses. I think that's just one of the many fine attributes of Dr. Adams. He's committed to St. Louis. He's committed to kids, and he wants to continue to push this district forward.
Rick Sullivan, our guest, talking about the news this week that the state of Missouri has given reaccreditation to the city schools. Rick Sullivan, I got to tell you, when I heard the news, I guess I was happy on one hand that things are going so well that it regains accreditation. But my first thought was, oh, great, your board is now going away, and we're going to go back to the elected board, which created all these problems in the first place.
There's no specificity for that. It's all really governed, if you will, by state statutes, unique statute just for our St. Louis Public Schools. And that statute says that the Missouri State Board of Education determines when the district is unaccredited district in 2007. When it did, a transitional district was put in place, a special board was created. That board is authorized by the State Board of Education through June of 2019, and they have the authority to continue it on even after that. Each of the three members are appointed separately, one by the governor, one by the mayor, one by the president of the Board of Aldermen. So as when Miss Adams or Dr. Melanie Adams left, the mayor, who appointed her originally, appointed a new person to take her place. So even if we as individual members move on for one reason or another, our appointer will replace someone to serve until the state board says we're ready to give this back to an elected board. And let me use the opportunity to just really share this information with your listeners. There is an important election in April. 3 positions on that elected board are going to be on the ballot, and it's important for people to consider running. Transition is going to happen sooner rather than later, and I think it's important that if you're a young person in the city, you've got a young family, or you're thinking about having a young family, this is a great opportunity to get down to the Board of Elections, sign up by next Tuesday, get on the ballot, and run for one of those 3 positions and become involved in taking St. Louis Public Schools from where it is today to, just the next level, to become involved, become a board member, and be a part of that elected board that sooner or later will be back in governance of the schools.
But this I kind of joke with this question or the phrasing of it, but there was sort of a shadow board, right? They've still gone through those elections. There are people still elected to that board over the last 10 years. They just didn't have any power to do anything.
That's correct. That board is still there. There have been elections periodically, and again, that's the one I mentioned that's coming up in April. But we are probably closer to transition today. As I said, we're authorized through 2019. But it's the State Board of Education that will make that decision. I think when they know or they believe that there's a good board, an experienced board, one that's prepared to step in and continue moving the district forward, they'll make that decision.
As a citizen of the region, it's the 21st century, Rick Sullivan. You're dealing with millions of dollars and a giant school with teachers and unions and contractors. It's a CEO-type job, and no disrespect to the mom who wants to be on the school board, but it's very different if you're in Callaway County dealing with that school and that school board as opposed to the city of St. Louis. Is it really, does it make sense to have a volunteer type of election as opposed to having a CEO like yourself who might be a little more schooled in the business practices of the 21st century?
McGraw, I think it's important that there's a real mix of people. This special administrative board had very different backgrounds, very different experiences. I have said that it's the diversity of the 3 members, our different backgrounds, our different beliefs, our different views, our different opinions, putting those on the table, keeping a focus on the students, that has moved the district in the direction that it's moved. So in an elected board, certainly having a parent, having people experienced in education, having people experienced in business, understanding how to run a larger organization, all those components are important in the governance makeup. But when those 7 people sit down at the table to determine how they're going to govern the district, they've got to keep the students first, take personal agendas out of the equation, and put their varied experiences together on the table to make the best decision possible.
Rick Sullivan, our guest for a couple of more minutes. The state has announced that it has given full accreditation to the St. Louis Public Schools, which is nothing short of a miracle. When you took over, there were 32,000 students. Now there are 22,000 students. What happened to the 10,000 students?
Moved to the county. It's not quite that low. It's probably closer to 24. One of the things that we knew was important for us, long-term success, is that we had to, find a way to draw those students back. I think, and there was some criticism. We couldn't just open up school doors and expect people to show up. That era's gone. We're in a competitive world. We compete with charter schools, private schools, frankly with the county. Many of those students, their families moved into St. Louis County, and now they're attending other schools. There's a voluntary transfer program. 6,000 students, 4,500 maybe today, are a part of that program. So we had to make our schools better. I think it's important, and I want to share this information. When we started, there were 12 accredited schools. Even though the state doesn't measure them, those measuring tools are out there. Today, there's 34. So there's 34 schools throughout the St. Louis area that are performing at very high levels. 12 of them are what are known as accredited with distinction, meaning they are achieving at the 90% level. Academically, attendance, the whole works, they're at the 90% mark. So there's some really great education being provided in many of our schools throughout the St. Louis area. We've got to make sure that the St. Louis community knows that. We've spent some money marketing that information. We're going to spend more money today to remind people the entire district's fully accredited. There are a variety of schools right in your neighborhood that are high performing that can give their young child every opportunity they'd be looking for in education.
But unlike charter schools, and unlike private schools, and unlike Catholic schools, whoever shows up, you have to teach, regardless of their background, regardless of their language. Dr. Kelvin Adams has been on the show a couple of times and has told us that he has teachers or students with 30-some-odd different languages that you are, by law, must teach, which is a burden on your budget that other school districts don't have.
All those challenges are out there. Richard Gaines, my fellow board member, reminds me all the time, reminds all of us all the time, despite any of these challenges, they can never be identified as excuses. We've still got to educate children and address all of these challenges. And there's no question the young students do have some challenges outside the classroom. I think that's one of the things that has led us to full accreditation. We've addressed those issues with social counselors, social workers, school counselors, many organizations that work in our schools providing support, clothes, food, eye care, dental care. I mean, so much more is done within the St. Louis City schools that you may not have in other parts of the region, but it certainly can't be an excuse. You've got to address those issues, still educate the child, and make sure they're successful.
Lots of news today with the election of Donald Trump and Mike Pence, who had changed school funding in the state of Indiana. Eric Greitens, the new governor here, has talked about school choice and sort of funding going, being able to give the funding to the parent and let the parent decide where the funds go. What are your thoughts as you watch the landscape today, Rick Sullivan?
I still say we recognize we're in a competitive environment. The year I started, our gross revenues, our general operating revenues were $353 million. They're down in the $290 million today. So with less monies, we still need to get the job done. We still got to educate students. We've got to compete for them and make them understand that St. Louis schools can offer them a same or better opportunity than a private school, a charter school, a county school. And I think we're doing everything we can to get that message out to the community. People, it's important that they visit the schools, meet with the principal, learn what opportunities are available, and I can almost guarantee if they do that, they will choose the right St. Louis school for their child.
We should also point out, you mentioned the lead in the water fountains. You were proactive in that. Cut off the problem before it got worse, and because of that, other school districts tested their water fountains because of the proactive work you did in the city.
That's correct. I mean, again, it's just one of those things. you identify it, or when it was brought to our attention, we moved as quickly as we could to identify the problem, authorize the expenditure of up to $1 million to fix it, and I'm going to say that matter is behind us. We have a program in place, a policy set to continue to monitor and test and know what the water condition is in the school. So I think that's one of those things. The box is checked, and people should not have any concern whatsoever about the condition and the quality of the water in our schools.
Rick Sullivan, CEO of the St. Louis Public Schools Special Administrative Board. So are you staying on through 2019? What's your future here?
I serve at the pleasure of the governor, so it is ultimately his choice, but I've enjoyed this opportunity. It's one of the most unique things I've ever been a part of, and certainly would enjoy continuing to work with Dr. Adams and my fellow board members as we keep moving this district a little bit farther and a little bit better down the road.
Just so I understand, the state school board will decide when and if the elected school board takes over. So it's up to those people who sit on the state education board. Is that correct?
They make the final decision. They are the exclusive decider of when and how and where this all takes place.
Interesting. Dr. Rick Sullivan, I don't know if you're a doctor.
No, not at
all. What is the most prolific high school in the state of Missouri?
Great question. Metro High School. It, for a long time, has been identified as the or one of the top performing schools. One of the things we've done during our tenure was open a second similar school, the College of Bioscience and Medicine. And out of the gate, the test scores and the performance of the students of those at that school has been nothing but incredible. And it is very conceivable that this year or in the very near future, we will have the number 1 and number 2 public high schools in the state of Missouri.
Pretty extraordinary stuff, Rick Sullivan. Anything else? I'm not asking you. Anything else you want the public to know? Anything else we missed? Anything else? Anything else you want to say?
Again, just a reminder of that April election. Become involved. McGraw, you always have questions that cover the gamut, and I think we've addressed everything. I guess I just want to say this. I really think it's the entire St. Louis region that should stand up and take a bow. And I said this on Tuesday because the St. Louis region has been involved in this. So many organizations, Civic Progress, Regional Business Council, Regional Growth Association, so many entities, organizations. Wells Fargo has been a phenomenal partner from day one. So many other entities that work with the district, that work with schools, that work with students, and where we're headed, what we've achieved, and I think where we're headed is really because of the work of the entire St. Louis community in this effort to put St. Louis Public Schools on the right track.
It also goes to show that, you had a business career, you had a business life, and after you retired, you didn't go to the golf course. You actually took over your passion of public education. So it's the business community coming back and being able to use your expertise to sort of superimpose that on a governmental agency, which helped out.
Well, I really owe a tip of the hat to the McBride folks because I really started this work while I was still there. My successor, John Eilerman, who was very understanding and gracious when I said I wanted 50% of my time to do something charitable or civic, and it turned into this opportunity. And then when the time came, I knew that McBride was in great hands with John at the helm, and it gave me the opportunity to devote full-time, if I needed to the work at St. Louis Public Schools.
Rick Sullivan, CEO of St. Louis Public Schools Special Administrative Board, congratulations on the full accreditation. Tell your mother I said hi. Tell her to keep listening, and we'll talk to you down the road, Rick.
You just said hi to her yourself. McGraw, thank you. I appreciate the opportunity this morning.
You got it. Rick Sullivan, ladies and gentlemen. That is a story. Unbelievable. 10 years ago, the school districts were in complete and utter disarray. It was a joke, and it's not perfect, but they have come a long, long way. It's a great story. 9:29 here, Big 550 KTRS. Gelmish & Sons, ladies and gentlemen, for all of your heating